Hi, and welcome to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm Ange McCabe, CEO and co-founder of Intuitive Performance. I'm a performance coach, HR professional, whole person leadership facilitator, and your host. The Human Side of Business podcast is fueled by the genuine curiosity to understand how personal characteristics and skills can be leveraged to drive individual and team performance, tangible outcomes, and ultimately organizational success within business. Each podcast is devoted to sharing knowledge, expanding our learning edges, and exploring the trends in corporate culture towards growing the emotional intelligence of organizations. I'm so glad you're here. Hi there, this is Ange McCabe, CEO and co-founder of Intuitive Performance, where our business is the success of your business. I'm a performance coach, HR professional, facilitator, and your host of the Elevate Business podcast. The Elevate Business podcast is a journey of discovery fueled by the curiosity to genuinely understand what makes people tick when it comes to their professional path, choices made, and the personal characteristics that drive performance, tangible outcomes, and ultimately success. The Elevate Business podcast is here to promote the enormous contributions of small and medium-sized businesses around the world by exploring the actions that make a workplace successful, the trends in corporate culture towards growing the emotional intelligence of an organization, and how we build whole person performance from the ground up. Each podcast is devoted to sharing knowledge, growing our learning edges, and honoring our passions with a special guest who has elevated their business, overcome obstacles, and inspires others to do the same. So glad you're here. Hi, and a warm welcome to episode number 8 of the Elevate Business podcast. I'm your host, Ange McCabe, and today I have the pleasure of introducing you to Theresa Smith, owner of the LeaderSmith. Theresa has a passion for leadership, and her mission is to change the world through leadership. Theresa believes we all have a ripple effect. Theresa's ripple effect is to work with leaders to make positive changes in the world. Welcome, Theresa.
Thank you, Ange. Happy to be here.
So glad you are here. So tell us a bit about yourself and your journey into the LeaderSmith.
Yeah. It's funny. I think when people find their purpose and they can translate that into their work life, they often find that their journey all along was leading them to that place. And that's a little bit how I feel. I've spent my life in various leadership roles or capacities. And my business and work career life has been in leadership roles, primarily in media and in technology. But from quite a young age, like mid-20s, I was in people leadership roles. I bounced back and forth between individual contributor roles and leadership roles. I ran a $50 million company for a number of years, 100 employees across a couple of markets. I have led sales, partnerships, operations, all kinds of different functions. But the thing that always really got me jazzed, like my real jam, was always the people. It was always the people function within any of those organizations that I worked at. And, it was about a year and a half ago, I started to think, where am I going to go next? What do I want to do with my work life? And a number of things were colliding at the same time. And I decided that I was going to drop all the functional expertise that I had been practicing in my career. So no more sales, no more partnerships, no more operations. And I was really going to focus on helping leaders be their best selves. And so I launched the LeaderSmith. And that was about a year ago. I was out in market talking about it around this time last year, and started in January with a hard launch, and have been pandemic, no pandemic. I don't know that it has had a huge impact on my business, but really, really loving working with high performers and high achievers to help them become their best selves and lead within their organization from a purpose-driven, a values-led perspective that helps them to show up as their best selves, get the best out of all of the people around them, and positively impact the world.
That's beautiful. And so, understanding your journey a little bit more, what was the pivot for you to go from the logistical leadership into the LeaderSmith?
It's kind of interesting. I had an interesting experience in my last, call it corporate gig, and I saw some really, really bad leadership, and also some good leadership, some really good leadership. And I had, of course, experienced good and great leadership in the past. I had experienced bad leadership in the past, and I had been a leader myself for many, many years. And I'm sure at times not great, and at other times pretty darn good. And it just really felt like the thing I wanted to focus on. As a leader, we impact the lives of so many. And crappy leadership can really negatively impact the lives of a lot of people. And you talked about the ripple effect. The ripple effect of having a bad boss is pretty extreme. You can have a bad boss, and we all know the bullies and things like that, but a bad boss can impact your self-esteem, your self-confidence, maybe even just your mood. And that impacts all the people around you, not just you, but your team, maybe your family, maybe your interaction with your friends. Like, the ripple effect of that is pretty extensive. And I decided that that's where I was going to focus my time. I was going to help leaders be better more of the time.
That's fantastic. Leadership oftentimes, wouldn't you say, is thought of as a job or a role or a position of power versus a position of privilege?
Interesting. I do think it's thought of as a role much of the time. I do think it is thought of as a position. I don't know about a position of privilege. Hadn't really thought about it in that context before. But certainly it is. Certainly it is. It is an opportunity. I often think of leadership as a way of being. Leadership for me is a way of being, how you show up in the world. So whether you are an aspiring leader or CEO, whether you are a leader in your workplace, within your community, within your family, it is about how you show up, how you take responsibility for yourself, how you take responsibility for your place in the world. So is that a privilege? If you have control, it's a privilege. Yeah. If you have control of yourself, but I don't generally think of it in those terms. I really do think about it in the ways of being and how we show up.
That's powerful. It really is. Because oftentimes we still think of jobs as separate from who we are as a person. And it's not the case. The way that we set up our systems, we're still looking at it as separate from that person when it's really the whole person.
Oh, absolutely. Whole person. It is whole person. And I often say, if you want to be a better leader, be a better human. You want to be a better parent, be a better human. You want to be a better partner or spouse, be a better human. And one of my underlying beliefs is that personal development is professional development. You cannot separate these things. It is holistic.
Agreed, 100%. You said that you're attracted to high performers. What does a high performer mean to you?
A high performer is typically someone who is already experiencing success in their career. They are driven to succeed. They are having a positive impact in their workplace. And that might mean their results.
Mm-hmm.
It might mean their impact on other people, right? It can be defined, I think, differently depending on the role or what someone does within their workplace. But I am attracted to people who want to do things, who want to have an impact.
Mm-hmm.
And high performers are typically people who want to have an impact.
It's a good way of putting it, certainly. And you lend yourself to a well-rounded background to achieve that definition of high performers. For you, what has been the biggest learning for your growth?
Oh gosh, I feel like I am constantly learning, and everything seems like an epiphany. There are tons of things that I would say are great learnings, but one of maybe the most profound learnings would be for me that our experiences in life, whether they're at work or otherwise, are really void of meaning until we ascribe a meaning to them.
Hmm.
And so the choice is ours. The meaning of the events and the experiences in our lives are up to us. And so I say to myself, choose wisely the meaning you want to ascribe to this experience.
Hmm. And how do you go? That's really interesting, because oftentimes people take the lens of you don't know what you don't know, and we have our personal biases, and we have our own backpacks with past experiences that may influence us. I find that really interesting in saying be careful as to how you ascribe to a definition specifically. So for you, what's your approach in taking almost a neutrality or being able to step away and kind of looking at it so that it's for your positive growth versus holding you back?
I am a positive person. I am a glass half full person.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps sometimes verging on Pollyanna. And I look at the world, maybe not as it is, but how I want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the ascribing. So I say, like, I generally slow down
Mm-hmm.
and step back and then make decisions around how I want to look at situations or perceive actions. And I'm very much aware of how other people do that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And from the work that you do, Ange, which is so much of that is raising awareness, self-awareness primarily. But once we raise our own self-awareness, we start to be able to be aware of others in a different way,
Mm-hmm.
because we are conscious of our own awareness of it.
Yes.
Right? So it's not happening anymore. We are ascribing a meaning to it.
Yes. Yes.
Once we can get to the point where we realize that we are doing that, I think it's really interesting. But in order to be purposeful in that, it does require me to slow down.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I find that can be such a hard thing to do because there's so many demands, right? We wear multiple hats. We have multiple roles in our community and our family. As a high performer ourselves in entrepreneurship, what would be your advice, or I guess, what's your take on slowing down?
Well, first and foremost, it's carving out time at the beginning of each day to very purposefully put myself in a mindset or choose a mindset that's going to serve me throughout the day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I start my day with movement, and then I do a little bit of meditation. And then I look at my day and I highlight the things that are most important for me to achieve during that day.
Mm-hmm.
And once I have done those things, I have set myself up for what my day is going to look like.
That's amazing. So balanced is what I'm hearing.
It is balanced, but it is also just, I could do those things before I go to bed at night as well. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I do some of that. But for me, that's important in the morning, because in the morning, it's kind of tone setting, right? It sets the tone for the rest of the day. If I skip any of those things, it kind of feels like something's missing for me.
Right, right. And for you at the end of the day, how do you set the tone so that, you have a peaceful sleep, or, you know what it's like. There's so many things that can occupy our brains and almost go in like a rotational lap.
Yeah,
How do you quiet yourself
yeah,
during the evenings?
yeah. This stuff is ongoing practice, right? I mean, none of this stuff is ever mastered.
Mm,
I don't believe anyway. Some gurus master it, I'm sure, but certainly not me. Um, you know what? I mean, this is probably part of it, though it's not, it has not always been intentional. I'm a bath girl.
mm-hmm.
I have a bath almost every night. It's like, preparing your baby for bed. I am like, okay, it's time for my bath. But on top of that, again, like I will lay in bed at night and do, call it, various forms of what would probably be considered meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And that is in order to stop my mind from going onto that hamster wheel and taking me off on all the things I need to do tomorrow, or all the things I didn't get done today, or that one conversation that I wish had gone differently, and running that one around and around and around and around again. I do little exercises. So one might be just following my breath. Another one that I recently learned was a little exercise where you feel the pads on your fingertips. So you put your fingertip and your thumb together, and you focus on feeling your fingertip ridges, like your fingerprint.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are focused on that, you generally aren't thinking about other things. And if you can begin to slow your brain down in focusing on that, honest to goodness, I'm kind of like, I'm asleep.
Mm.
And if I wake up in the night, because this is more my problem, it's not generally falling asleep, it's generally waking up and being, oh God, everything starts going for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Heading back into this little kind of feeling the fingertips
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
has been a real game changer
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
for getting back to sleep.
And our viewers can't see us right now, but I'm doing it with you, Theresa. And I must admit, I've heard of grounding exercises, so focusing on your five senses. But this particular one, it almost triggers multiple parts of your brain, because you're thinking about what it actually feels like, your finger, your fingerprint. And it's quite challenging for anything else to kind of creep in there. So that's a really great tidbit in the sense of drawing you back to the space that you want to be in.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
yeah. Another thing that came up for me as you were speaking was around performance itself. So, you've lent a lot of words or adjectives around high performers, and, getting yourself in the proper space for leadership and the ripple effect. When you hear the word performance, what does it mean to you?
When I hear the word performance, I think of tires. It's honestly, I don't use the word performance very much. It
I
is
love it.
not a word. It's not a word that comes up very much for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think, but like if I were to ascribe a meaning to it, it would have to do with effectiveness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like how effective, if I ascribe it to myself or to my clients, to people, it would be how effective are you in what you're doing,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
whatever that might be, right? Like if
Mm-hmm.
you're baking an apple crisp, how effective? At work, how effective? We do performance management stuff at work all the time, right? We're constantly looking at that. um, I think as we get into leadership and you get more and more senior in leadership, 80% of the game is psychological. 80% of success as a senior leader is how much you have command of your own mind.
Mm-hmm.
By the time you get to senior leadership, you are a functional expert.
Mm-hmm.
You generally know very well how to do the functional part of your job. We see lots of people get promoted into senior leadership roles because of their functional expertise, not because of their leadership potential, not because they've been a great director
Mm-hmm.
or a great manager,
mm-hmm.
but because they've been a functional expert.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe in that context, maybe that's why I don't think of performance so much, because I think of performance management, really that is about achieving objectives. That is about KPIs for me. No,
Mm-hmm.
maybe not for everyone, but certainly for me, I think about KPIs. I think about objectives. I think about numbers. I think about measurement. And when I think about leadership, I think about impact. And when I think about leadership, I don't think about performance in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
I think about tires.
I'm so excited to write about tires when I introduce you. I'm joking. It's a wonderful analogy in the sense of how that word resonates with you. And so when you think about using your words, Theresa, when you think about your impact, what does that mean?
God, what do I want my impact to be? I set in different intentions every day.
Mm-hmm.
So really, my impact is dependent upon my day. Ultimately, I want people to go away feeling heard, feeling held, feeling inspired, feeling seen. But my intentions can change daily. So depending on where I start from, my intention might be to be firm. I have 2 teenagers. So, sometimes what's my impact? My impact is I need them to be in class doing their work, and I want my impact to be as a good guide to get them there.
Mm-hmm.
Other days, my impact, I want it to be kindness. So my intention is to be kind, depending on who I'm interacting with and what I'm doing. But overall, I want my impact in the world to be one where when people have spent time with me, they go away feeling that they can do more, but that they're also okay just the way they are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That makes me think. Feeling like they can do more, but that they're okay just the way that they are. Does that speak to building confidence in growth, but also being okay in the space or with whom you are at this point?
I think it is having confidence in who you are right now.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing that this is not the end of the journey.
A continuous evolution.
It's a path. It's ongoing. It's not going to end.
Definitely.
And we are the meaning ascribing aspect of that, right? Like we assign the meaning. And if you want to have a bigger impact or a better impact or a different impact, all of that is possible.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. And so when we look at it from the lens of we're on our journey, and maybe we've hit a day or a couple days or a week or maybe even a month that things just aren't going right. It's sticky. We feel stuck. How do you go about moving through those things?
With patience. I try to muster self-compassion. I try to do for myself the same things that I would coach my clients through.
Mm-hmm.
And that is to celebrate the small wins, to go away and make note of the things that are going right,
Mm-hmm.
to understand that nothing is permanent. The law of impermanence applies to this as well.
Mm-hmm.
To recognize where there have been moments of joy or progress or fun or accomplishment. And try to allow those moments to unstick me, and to use those to propel me forward and to create momentum around that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's easier said than done, of course, it always is. But I believe in doing the things that make you feel good. When you're stuck, find time, make time, take time to do the things that will bring you joy or make you laugh. And that might be music, it might be exercise, it might be spending time with your dog. Who knows, right? It's going to be as unique as the individual. But find some time to do those things. Note how you're feeling during that time.
Mm-hmm.
And go back to it as much as you can.
Reflecting is really key. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I hear you. And so in moving through your journey, how do you identify your next steps? Do they holistically come for you? Is it something that there's thought put into? Is it somewhere's in between? What does that look like for you?
I feel like I'm a work in progress on this front, actually, Ange. I have been a high control individual for most of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been a planner, and I have been a goal setter, and I have been an achiever and a driver. And that served me very well throughout much of my career. And I feel like that is in a state of change for me to some degree, because I now find myself being still more often and allowing things to come to me. Mm-hmm. I am noticing more the opportunities that are presented to me versus creating opportunities and pursuing them, or creating a plan and pursuing that. Mm-hmm. So it's a different approach that I find myself taking in my business today. So I am much more contemplative and allowing myself to see the opportunities versus create them all the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's an interesting perspective. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
What are 3 words of inspiration that you would want the world to hear from you?
Oh, 3 words of inspiration. Can I pick 4?
Go for it.
You get to choose.
Love it. It's just that simple, isn't it?
You get to choose. Yeah.
And how do you aspire to those words?
It all gets back to meaning making for me. Mm-hmm. And I get to choose what things mean. Mm-hmm. I get to choose how I respond to things. I get to choose how I'm going to use my time. Mm-hmm. I get to choose where I'm going to direct my attention. Our attention is what everyone wants today. Media especially wants our attention. Mm-hmm. And so many people get sucked into the darkness of media, whether it's social media or television or any of the other things that are out there. Mm-hmm. You get to choose who, what gets your attention.
Exactly.
Choose wisely.
That's so powerful. And so coming to the...
Like all things though, Ange, easier said than done.
With practice, right?
Which is why it's aspiring. right? Inspire, aspire, right? It is an aspirational goal.
Yeah. I really enjoy your candor. That's amazing, Theresa. And so can you tell us where you're working out of and how people can contact you in future if they wish to reach out to you individually?
Yeah. So I'm based in Toronto, but my work is border free, borderless. I have clients across North America, and I'm actually talking to someone over in Europe right now as well. So it really doesn't matter where you are or where I am. Technology allows us to be together. So my work is with whomever it connects with, really. And I can be found, my website is the LeaderSmith, www.theleadersmith.ca. So it's a Canada extension there, theleadersmith.ca. I can be found on LinkedIn. And if you look up LinkedIn, I think my extension on LinkedIn is I am Theresa Smith, and it's Theresa with an H. That's probably the trickiest part of any of it is it Theresa with an H or not an H? And I can also be found on Instagram at I am Theresa Smith.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Theresa, for joining me today.
Oh, and it's been a real pleasure. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. And I really appreciate you sharing your entrepreneurial insights with Intuitive Performance and our subscribers. For those who would like to learn more about your business and Theresa as a whole, we're going to provide a link to Theresa's company's profile on the Elevate Business Podcast title page. Take good care. Thanks for listening to the Elevate Business Podcast. I hope you enjoyed the program. You can subscribe to future podcasts at intuitiveperformance.com, where you can also sign up for webinars and learn more about professional coaching and our facilitation solutions available to help fire up your whole person performance skills and drive actions for success. Until next time, stay true to you and take care of each other. We are all better together. Thanks for listening to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm glad you could join us. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay updated with our latest content, make sure to visit our website. The link can be found in the episode description, where you can subscribe to the podcast, sign up for our newsletter, and learn more about our whole person leadership services. Sounds interesting? Explore the Whole Person Leadership Cohort by Intuitive Performance, a unique program that offers unparalleled support to managers on every step of their leadership journey. Our program features evidence-based assessments, workbooks, group coaching, and interactive learning experiences to help you level up your leadership skills. Reach out today to apply to one of our upcoming cohorts. Until next time, take care and stay curious.